Chapter 1, Broken Record, Danielle. I've never met a person more drunk on love than my mom. She's got a list of old school romance movies she's always been obsessed with and has the nerve to rate them in order of her favorites. Thing is, that order changes every month. For September, it's number 1, Love Jones. Number 2, Love and Basketball. Number 3, Waiting to Exhale. Number 4, How Stella Got Her Groove Back. Number 5, Jason's Lyric. I love that list. And number 6, the list goes on, but you get the point. That is the beginning of the new book. It is called Love Radio, and the author is with us today. Sina Ghaznavi, of course, is here. Let me welcome Ebony Ladelle. Welcome. Hi.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. I'm excited to be here.
Listen, I love writers. I love new writers. I love love. I love that this summertime and it's light and it's here. It's not race and drama. Or is it? Is Love Radio what I'm going to expect it to be?
I will say yes, because I think you are going to get all the love that you want in this book. And also you're going to get love from a Black lens. So we're going to be talking about things that are important to the community. And it was a lot of fun writing it, because I wanted to show teenagers how even in, their quest to find love, they got some stuff that they got to deal with. And in order to, have a healthy relationship, you got to deal with the stuff that's in your own home and your own, internally, the things that you're dealing with. So that's what the book is. It's, it's love in a relationship, but it's like love of family, love of community, love of self. Like it's a lot of love outside of just a romantic love.
Well, you had me at the list because I think I'm your mother. I was like, I see nothing wrong here. I must be. Let me check. Where was I 20 something years ago? Ebony Ladelle is here. What does your list look like?
That's a lot of my list. I'm going to say, because it's not technically a romance, but I'm going to put up there. I'm going to say top 3, no particular order: Love Jones, Love and Basketball, The Wood. Those are my top 3, like in no order.
The Wood makes it over Stella?
You know why The Wood makes it over Stella? Because when we talk about like coming of age stories, because this is a young adult novel, Love and Basketball and The Wood were my coming to age stories. Like they were my, when we think of like 10 Things I Hate About You and She's All That and all the like, white considered mainstream romances, like they weren't marketing teenage love stories for Black teens to us. So those are my stories. And so The Wood, like I forever ride for The Wood, like all the time, hands down.
Not to be left out, Sina, do you have a top 3 list of love movies that rom-coms maybe that you snuggle?
Let me tell you, if there weren't many romantic movies marketed to Black people, there were even fewer marketed to Iranians. And so
sorry to hear that.
Not Without My Daughter. That's a love story with Sally Field, where her daughter gets kidnapped by her Iranian husband and taken to Iran. She loves her child.
Oh no!
Oh wow! Okay, I see.
But I would say there's not many. But listen, I don't want to keep it too dark here, but I wanted to ask you, Ebony, what is your process for writing something like this? It sounds like you're pulling from a lot of your own coming of age stories. What is your writing process when you're approaching a piece of work like this?
Oh, exactly that. The whole concept of the story was actually inspired by my childhood. I grew up in like the Detroit metro area until I was about 14. And I remembered driving to work with my mother and us listening to radio shows. And I'm thinking of like Mason in the Morning was like the local one. There was, Steve Harvey, Ricky Smiley, all of those shows, and how they had like the latest celebrity gossip and tea. They had a lot of pranks, which were sometimes uncomfortable, and they had like horrible love advice. And so when I was like conceptualizing Prince and figuring out, okay, he's going to dish out love advice, what is the platform? I thought of radio, because I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if like this high school boy was able to give like actually really good love advice? And it was so good that he got his own show and he became like a local celebrity. And I thought of radio and I was like, oh, this is it. Like, this is the story. So a lot of it, like the first chapter that Karen just read, like that is actually pulled from me and my mother. She would watch the same movie every other day. And I'd be like, Mom, why are we doing this again? But I would also sit there and watch the same movie with her every other day. So I was at fault too, you know? So yeah, definitely pulled from a lot of like fun experiences growing up.
All right. So Ebony Ladelle, she comes out of publishing. You are still, did you quit your job?
Yeah, I'm taking a little sabbatical for the
yes,
year.
you do that. I love it.
Okay.
I'm saying that not because I don't want people to quit their jobs, but I feel like this is your passion. Yeah. So you're published now. You're out there in the streets selling books. Let's go. But being in publishing, as you know, many know that I was in for a number of years. How has it changed? And being a marketer, did it make it easier for you as a writer?
I was in publishing for a little over a decade, and it's been an interesting journey because I went to Howard and I worked at the bookstore, which was like independently owned when I worked there. So my first taste of publishing and actually like learning that this was a career was through a Black-owned bookstore. And I was like, oh, like I'm meeting these publicists, and I'm like, oh, I could like, there's a whole machine around this that I could work for. This is pretty dope. And then when I come into the space, so when I moved to New York and come to the space, I realized, oh, not only are there different imprints or divisions for different types of books, but like, it's not many Black books being published, you know, like it's scattered across multiple houses and multiple divisions. And I'm lucky if I get to work on one a season. So that was, really frustrating trying to convince an institution that Black people buy books when I actually just came from an institution of Black people who bought books. That was tough. But I will say that within like the last decade, I've seen a change in the types of books that are being acquired, and sometimes the marketing dollars and how people are thinking about pitching, about, you know, media that's actually giving space to Black artists. And so that's promising. It's still very slow. And I think we can all attest in all types of media, it's still, you know, the change is happening, but it feels like, you know, it's happening very slowly. So
I feel like they have amnesia, you know, because I came up in the era. Terry McMillan was crushing it, selling lots and lots of books. I had the pleasure of working with Elin Harris before he passed. Every single title sold 100,000 units, and you know that's bank for a publisher, right? 100,000 units every single time, and he started out of the trunk of his car as an IBM salesman. I think about Kimberly Lawson Roby, Victoria Christopher Murray, Rashonda Tate Billingsley, Eric Jerome Dickey. I'm thinking they moved units. They moved units consistently. Even somebody like L.A. Banks, who was doing horror, you know, and B.B. Moore Campbell, rest in peace, you know, and I can rattle these names off because I was in Tunde Dada in East Orange every week getting books from a Black-owned bookstore. And I think it's really sad that this industry, publishing, they will throw millions of dollars at somebody that they like, that they met at a party in the Hamptons, and they may sell 10 copies. Or Alicia Keys, who sold 4,000 copies, they gave her $1 million for a poetry book. I love her, but like they do the celebrity thing. But inside our community, we support Angie Thomas. Now, I mean, we have a whole crop of young people. I hope you're among them, Ebony. But you know, are you hopeful that's going to catch up?
Oh, I mean, I am. I think that there are a lot, like you mentioned, Angie Thomas. I worked on the tail end of The Hate U Give and the rest of it, and the books that she had following. And I worked in young adult, and that's actually young adult literature was also something I was always interested in, because I feel like teenagers are always at the forefront. They're always the one challenging the status quo. I can say that word, challenging the status quo. And what I was finding was like working in adult publishing it was so much slower to change. It was so frustrating having to educate someone on a topic that I felt like a lot of people in the YA community was more abreast, you know, like more able to handle and have a discussion about. And the other thing is teens, like I always say as a marketer, the good thing about working and marketing in a publishing space is if you mess up, like they're going to tell you, our market is going to tell us, you know, like they're going to call you out. And I think it's really important because that's how you learn and grow. And they're going to call you out if they feel like there are not enough diverse titles, if they're not, enough titles that speak to a marginalized community. So I always think that children's literature is always the one changing the game. And like, we're seeing so many books now, it's Pride Month, and the amount of books that talk about the LGBTQIA plus experience that are coming out is far more than I saw 5 years ago, but there's still a long way to go. And so I'm hopeful. And also, like, as someone who took a sabbatical, I was like, I'm also hopeful for like the new people coming in, and like, with the passion and the fire. I just needed a break, because it's also very exhausting, having to constantly fight to have these books being pushed out, and like a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I can not really talk about. There were a lot of things that I had to experience that I had to fight for, and that part is exhausting too.
to be in a room as a publisher and see not a single Black person seller. You're going out to sell my books, and nobody in here is from my community, and you don't even understand how are you selling? No wonder I'm not getting the orders in Barnes and Nobles, because what are you telling them? Yeah. Why am I not out there doing that? These are my books. Why wouldn't you put me out there? But that's
actually a really good point, because it reminds me, Karen, of just in general how you can be in a space and you are one thing, but you, as a Black person, you have to be all the things. So like, you have to be an editor and say, ooh, that part that we need to tweak that, because that wouldn't fly in the Black community, or this cover, there's something wrong with them curls, or hand selling a book. Like, what are you saying? Okay, this is how I would pitch it. And then they go and they pitch it that way. And it's like, oh, it catches on. Like, you're just juggling so many different hats, that's part of the exhaustion and burnout that I feel like a lot of BIPOC people in the industry feel when they are like, I got to dip out.
Well, I'm so incredibly proud. All right, Prince Jones, when you were writing him, to be in the mind of a young man, who were you channeling?
I like to say I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of charming men in my family and in my life. And so I would say Prince is honest. It's funny because people were like, oh my God, Prince is so charming. He's like the perfect boyfriend for like a book. And I have to say, like, I'm sorry. It's just, I have this coming to me, like I have these examples of men who are charming and sweet and strong, and also sort of caregiving, and, like these kind of like redefining the status quo of like what it is to be a man in my life. So it's been really nice having that as reference.
So he's aspirational?
I like to say Prince, because Prince is an old soul. And I like to say for people who are like, why is he seems so much more like an adult than he is? One is because he's a caregiver. He's helping his mother who has MS. He's sort of being the man of the family. So, when we talk about the adultification of Black teenagers, like that's a really good example. But two, I wanted Prince to feel like an older brother or cousin to any teenager that's reading this book and is getting love advice from him, to know that like, oh, like that's something like my big bro would say, or my big cousin would say. So in that regard, he's aspirational for me, for a lot of teenagers who are like on the dating scene, trying to figure out how to do this thing right.
Ebony, you wrote this novel. Is it something that you want to see as a film, as a television show, as a podcast?
I mean, it would be nice. I'm not going to say no. Cool. I wouldn't say, but if I'm writing a novel that is channeling so many movies that I love, and Stella is obviously in there too, because I know Karen, you came for me a little bit. All these movies are movies that I love. This is why I hate saying what my favorite movies are, but all these movies are movies that I love for so many different reasons. And I would absolutely love to see this on the screen, big or small, one day. So
we should. It should be a series. If they can do Never Have I Ever and all these other little things on. I mean, come on, Netflix. Y'all know y'all need some help. Come on through. Enough of the Nollywood. Let's get some Ebony Ladelle in there, and she can run her own show, because I feel like you could do that too. I'm gonna speak that into creation for you.
Okay, I'm gonna receive it.